Welcome back to the SportsMax Zone. We continue with football. Leeds travel to Villa Park early on Friday to tackle Aston Villa in the English Premier League. At sports time, Aston Villa were leading 2-1, and of course they're in the 90th minute right now, so we'll keep you updated on that final score. These are the remaining fixtures. Manchester United, they play Manchester City this weekend. This is set to be extremely mouth-watering. Brighton up against Liverpool. Everton face Southampton. Nottingham will be seeing Leicester. Wolves play West Ham. Brentford up against Bournemouth. Chelsea play Crystal Palace. Newcastle up against Fulham. And what we've all been looking for, also Tottenham up against Arsenal. Well, the box office affair on Saturday, without question, is the 189th Manchester derby. Ahead of the match, both managers told reporters that they are expecting a tough contest.
We have to prove that tomorrow on the pitch, and there's only one truth, it's always on the pitch. And so, quite clear, last time we did well, so we have to do tomorrow better. We know where we have to work on. And it's not only fun, it's coming overnight. No, there was a process in the last months where we developed, where we progressed, and now we have face it against better teams. We're looking forward to it, and I think that's one of the things is about the mental approach, the mental attitude. So we have to be brave, and we have to act with belief, and play our game.
So many games are still to play already quite. It's important always is important against United. It doesn't matter competition, especially the Premier League, but at the end it's a football game, like many things is going to happen in the future.
Joining us now to preview the clash is Simon Evans. Good afternoon, Simon.
Good afternoon.
All right, so a huge weekend ahead of us. Can you just give us an insight into, both teams heading into this big clash? Who has the advantage?
Yeah, I mean, I think the advantage is always going to be with Manchester City at the moment because they have a stronger squad and a much better record over the last few years than Manchester United have. But in the last few weeks, there has been a sort of shift a little bit in the mood around Manchester, I think, with City losing to Southampton in the League Cup and United having a good run of form. So, it does feel like there's a little bit of the swagger back at United and maybe a little bit of edginess at City.
And as you say that, we know whenever manager Pep Guardiola is unhappy, and he has a lot to be unhappy about, getting kicked out of the Carabao Cup and all that, he makes a lot of changes. Based on what you know, do you expect to see any major changes in the City lineup? Yeah,
I mean, I think he's got a habit for big games and derby games of switching things up tactically, switching up his personnel, playing a system that maybe wasn't expected or is designed specifically to frustrate Manchester United. So it's hard to know what it'll be, and he almost hinted at it this week, saying, I've been thinking about doing something really crazy for the United game. So we'll see what he comes up with, but there's enough quality in that Manchester City side to give him several options for how he might line up in that game.
Yeah, now a quick word on Marcus Rashford. He seems to be, happy, and whenever he's happy, he produces. Do you think Marcus Rashford would have a key role to play if Manchester United are to defeat Manchester City this weekend?
Oh, absolutely. And he has been in great form. It's been good to see him back with a smile on his face and playing positively, looking confident. I still think, that with him on the left and Anthony on the right, they're just missing that person down the middle. Now they've agreed to loan Wout Weghorst, the Dutchman who scored 2 goals against Argentina in the World Cup, to come and occupy that central position. Not clear yet whether he will be available for the derby game in time. It's unlikely, but United still aren't quite there. But Rashford's return to form has been a key part of their revival.
Simon, what's really happening at Man City? And I ask because of this. Clearly, we're not into the hyperbole of the like the Daily Mail or the Mirror style of crisis, problems and all this. But the reason I ask is this. Not so long ago, I think it was 2 games ago, Pep spoke of body language at training. And that was the game before, that was the press conference before he dropped Phil Foden for a key game. He said the body language of certain players wasn't impressive or wasn't good enough at a training session leading into a game. And then, ahead of this Manchester United clash on Saturday, and the defeat by Southampton in the Carabao Cup. We hear Ilkay Gundogan hitting out to say that something is missing, some spark has been lost, and it's the players who seem to be, he didn't use the word complacent, but what he said can be summed up as complacent. So, there's my question. Inside the team itself, Guardiola saw body language at training that didn't please him and that he was moved to comment on. And then one of their senior players, a man who wears the captain's armband more often than anybody else, is hitting out at players dropping standards and not being at their optimum. Hence the question, what's really happening from how you read it?
You know, I think it's easy to forget that we had a World Cup just before Christmas, didn't we? And, you know, Manchester City had a squad that was extremely involved in that. Across, I think, you know, of their key players, it was only really Erling Haaland who wasn't involved, and they come back and they come back in and they come back to a side that's doing well and has continued to do well, and some complacency might have been there, maybe a lack of intensity. I suspect some of it might be, and this is just me suspecting and speculating, but I think Guardiola hates these breaks in the middle of a season like that, where he loses his control over his team for pretty much a month there, and he has to try and pick it up again. And I think a lot of this could be the frustration from Guardiola, who likes to keep that momentum and keep that constant pressure on his team to deliver. They go away for a month, they come back, they start to ease back into it, which might be a natural reaction for the players, but it's not something that Guardiola wants to know about.
Yep. The Manchester United first game this season, that was round 6? Was that round 6? It was very early on,
wasn't it? Yeah.
Very early in the campaign. So if I count back, the games that they played in Australia and Thailand, if you add those to it, we can accurately say that Ten Hag was about 10 games into his Manchester United career. Guardiola, of course, has logged hundreds of games with Manchester City and numerous trophies to show for it. So one man knows what he has inside out. One man didn't know what he had in terms of person and what he could ask them to do in terms of executing a philosophy. Now we're about 17 games deep into the Premier League season for Manchester United. Do you think the fact of the time that Ten Hag would have had with this Man United team to bring them to hand, that will be evident in how they play this second fixture against Man City this time?
Well, it has to be, really. I mean, I think this is a huge test for me for Ten Hag, because there's been a lot of, I think, a little bit premature praise for what's going on at Manchester United. There's no doubt there's been an uptick in their performance levels. They look a better team. They look more like a team that could finish comfortably in the top 4 and maybe start to challenge again. But let's see them against Manchester City. Let's see them in these big games and see how they cope with it. A Champions League level game like this, because it's one thing to win games against lower teams in the Premier League, and it's a totally another thing against teams like this. So before everybody starts saying Ten Hag has turned Manchester United around, he's making them a force again, they're going to be contenders, let's see how they do against Manchester City.
Well, here's one for you, my friend, and I'm totally believing in what you're saying. Here's one for you. Isn't it right for the Manchester United fan to feel optimism and to want to give Ten Hag a pat on the back? Because under Ten Hag, what we're seeing is makeshift teams getting the jobs done against teams who used to beat Manchester United at full strength in the past. We're seeing a Luke Shaw playing at centre-half in a Premier League game, keeping a clean sheet. We're seeing Kobe Mino, a 17-year-old, a Calo youth being thrown in. We've seen reserve players getting chances against teams that Manchester United would struggle to put away with their first choice selection. Isn't that, Simon, a mark of improvement?
It is. It suggests that there's a system in place, doesn't it? It suggests there's a framework at least there for players to be able to come in, and it's not totally disrupting things if you're having to play another player centre-half or in midfield and so on. So, yes, but, you know, let's see. Ten Hag spent £250 million in the window, which is something that neither Jose Mourinho, Ralph Rangnick or Ole Gunnar Solskjaer ever got to do. So it should be an improvement. But let's see against Manchester City what they're up, if they're up for it, if they're up to that level. I mean, I think they're getting there, and I think it could be a really, really interesting game. And I think United fans are right to be optimistic, and they deserve to be, and they have to be. But I'm just pausing a little bit the brakes on that optimism and caution a little bit that let's just see against a really top side.
No problem. One of the hallmarks of every good coach I know in every league, for all the time I've been keenly interested in football, is that they always rise for a big game. And I say that to say Antonio Conte is a big manager, whatever you want to say about his mannerisms and his mood and his temperament. The Latin blood runs strong in him, even though he's not a Latino. But his Spurs side against an Arsenal team flying head of the league and causing people to now say that they look like Premier League champions in waiting. Do you see a potential trap being set for Mikel Arteta and his men by Conte and his powers of motivation for this Tottenham Hotspur side?
I think you're right in what you're suggesting there, that Conte is somebody who gets up for these big games and makes sure his team are up for these big games. And I think that the way Spurs have been playing this year, they haven't looked good in games where you'd expect them to go out and dominate. You know, they've struggled in the first half of so many games. That's been well documented. They've had to come back and win matches in the second half. And a lot of that, they just don't seem comfortable going out there and imposing themselves. And this is a game where they're going to be a little bit more on the back foot. They're going to have to work back and they're going to have to close down and deny Arsenal and look to hit them on the break. And Conte's sides are designed to hitting teams on the break. So I think it's going to be a fascinating battle between an Arsenal side that loves to have the ball and to play and to dominate, and a Tottenham team that loves to counter-attack and punish with their potent strike force.
Yeah, you know, it's funny. Before this season, Eddie Nketiah is not a player who I would have in the best 50 players in the English Premier League. And I'd even struggle to find him someplace close to that 50. In the absence of Gabriel Jesus, he seems to have gone up a notch. Are we seeing a player who's finally showing his true ability, or are we seeing a player who's just in a good run of form?
No, I think we're seeing a player who's shown his ability for a long time, actually, but he hasn't had the opportunities. And maybe those little 20-minute appearances as a substitute, or those Carabao Cup matches where he got his chance, he didn't always take them. Actually, his goal-scoring record in those sort of games, those
rather good.
Cup matches. Eh?
It's rather good, that record.
Yeah, I think he had a hat-trick last season in one of the cup competitions as well. So his goal-scoring record in those games is good. The substitute appearances in the Premier League, perhaps when they're hoping he was going to come on and make an impact, it's a tough thing for a young striker to do, is that. I think he's getting the chance that he's deserved. I saw him play 4 or 5 years ago with one of England's youth teams and remember being extremely impressed by his overall qualities. And so I'm glad to see him getting this chance. And Arsenal really needed that, because losing Gabriel Jesus was a massive blow for them. And it's going to be interesting to see how he does.
Yeah, I've seen Arteta and Arsenal in pockets of good form that they come against a strong rival and they come a cropper. Do you suspect it's a different Arsenal team that will take the field on the weekend? Do you expect them to win?
I do think it's a different Arsenal team. I don't have that feeling about them. I've seen it happen season after season where Arsenal would get off to a decent start and then they'd come up north to play against, a Liverpool, a City or a United and get 4 goals and go back down to London with their tails between their legs. And then the derby games, of course, are another story altogether in London. I don't have that feeling about them. They don't feel like they have that weakness or that soft underbelly or that uncertainty anymore. They look very confident, well organised. They've got a decent backup in their squad of players who can come in and interchange at left back or wherever. And so I do feel Arsenal start this game as favourites. And I think I would be surprised if they were to fold. But what I do think is that Spurs are a side that could cause them a lot of problems, exactly because of what I just said about the way Conte sets his teams up.
I read an article this week talking about the bumpy road that Martin Odegaard has taken to success. And I said, bumpy road? This was the boy that we were hearing about from he was 13 years old, signed by Real at 15, and he was to the manner born where football is concerned. And yes, he didn't quite go his way at Real, and he made his corn on loan, and now here he's at Arsenal flourishing. How much credit should Arteta take for unlocking in Odegaard what the world saw and was going gaga about from he was just into his teens?
And also, the staff at Arsenal, Edu, the director of football, they're spotting a player who was really considered as a flop at Real Madrid, very unfairly, because he went there so young. I mean, for a 16-year-old kid from Scandinavia to go to a club like Real Madrid and be described as the next Zidane and the next Ronaldo and everything that flew at him from the Spanish press, it's no surprise, really, that he couldn't live up to that and didn't really cope with it. But a lot of those players can fade and disappear. You know, we've seen plenty of young 15, 16-year-olds who are going to be the next big thing, just never develop. Arsenal took a chance on him. They believed him. They saw there was enough there, and there is. Technically, he's an outstanding footballer. And the loan move was a good way of doing it, to be able to have a look at him, make that decision, and then commit to him. And they've been rewarded for that.
Excellent, excellent. As you say, I think the crucial bit was say, you know what, take him on loan. Let's see if he takes to these waters, this duck, and then let's take it from there. And I think it has worked out very well so far. Thank you very much for your time, Simon. All the best.
All the best. Cheers.
Good, good, good. We can tell you that Aston Villa have beaten Leeds 2-1. The Jamaica international, Leon Bailey, with a goal and an assist for Aston Villa. They've taken down the Jesse Marsh Leeds boys 2-1. Break time here on the SportsMax. We're back with more after these.